This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
All right, who's ready for some football? The Arizona Cardinals mandatory minicamp is underway. Media gets in the door on Tuesday morning. Will Budda Baker be in attendance? What will he say? We have so many questions to answer tomorrow. Let's talk to one of the wisest football writers that I know here in the Valley. Maybe the wisest guy, but he's seen a lot of football. The one, the only, Howard Balzer joins us here on the Extra Point Podcast. Howard, how are you today?
Mark, I'm doing great, man. How are you? It's like you said, 2 days of mandatory minicamp, which they shortened, by the way, from 3 days. And then we've got a little pause, a little break until the end of July. But it's always a great thing when you can say training camp starts next month. That's always music to a lot of football fans' ears.
All right, so are you bullish on this Cardinal team this year, or kind of like the rest of us? I want to be excited. There's just so much change and there's so much different. I'm trying to find something to get fired up about over there. What should I be fired up about?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think maybe the thing to be excited about is just to see how this all plays out with the way Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon and everybody else has constructed this roster and what they've done in these last few months since the start of the league year in March, and then just see how it all plays out. I don't know if there's anything to be totally on fire about and really excited, because there's so many unknowns. And of course, it'd be one thing, Mark, if we knew that Kyler Murray was going to be available for training camp and be available from week one. I think that would change or alter a lot of the perspectives. You don't know. I mean, no one truly knows when he will be available. And so I think that creates a lot of unknowns around this team. But, the wide receiver core you wonder about, couple positions on the offensive line you wonder about, the defense and losing some top players you wonder about. So I guess from one standpoint, it's exciting to wonder how this will all look this year. And that hopefully, whatever it looks like in week one, it will improve and get better throughout the season. That's the one thing that I think that everyone truly hopes for.
Well, and if Budda Baker doesn't want to be there, that's a huge red flag for me. Do you think he will be at mandatory minicamp? I guess he was in the building today. Do you think he'll be on the field on Tuesday when we get in? And then do you feel like he'll even talk to us?
That second part, I think, is the big question I have. I've heard some say throughout the day, well, just because he's in the building doesn't mean he'd be on the field. Well, but what's the point of being there then? Just to show up and just stand around and watch? Now, how much he would be on the field, that you wonder about, because he hasn't been there. We've seen guys like, for example, Kelvin Beachum, who missed a whole bunch of the OTAs, that was there for the first time last week and didn't do a whole lot of work in practice. Same thing with DJ Humphries, who's been coming back from the back injury. So at least in some things, they would want to have him on the field. The question is, will they make him available to talk to us? And we don't have any control over that. It's not like it's open where you can just go up and interview whoever you want to. I would hope that Budda would clear the air and just say, yeah, I want to talk to everybody. Now, how much he would say, we have to wait and see. But I would hope that would be the case. But yeah, we won't know until tomorrow or Wednesday whether he will talk to the media.
Well, and those fines are pretty significant, so that would kind of be my reason if I was Budda Baker for being in the building today and at least there tomorrow, whether you talk to the media or not. But when it comes to just his situation, where would you kind of put the level of frustration for Budda Baker right now, given what he did last year during the season and where the state of the franchise is now?
That's a great question, because we all just presume from things that have been said and things that have been speculated that this is about his contract and all those things. And that at one point he had the meme where he kind of let it out to a degree that he feels disrespected. We don't know what all that means. The thing you wonder about, I mean, as you said, you look at last year, you look at the hard knocks, you look at Budda Baker's passion for football. And it's not just about playing well and just about getting paid. He wants to win. He doesn't want to go out there on the field and have this constant losing, which there was last season. And so you wonder what does he really feel about this team? And does he feel that there's a chance for this team to at least, you might not win many games, but at least you can play good football. At least you can be in games. At least you can be competitive. And like I said, improve throughout the season. So that's the thing that's hard about this, because it's hard to read Budda Baker's mind in terms of what he truly wants. And so it'll be interesting to see. And so I don't know if we'll get all those answers. There's one aspect of this that hasn't been talked about a lot is that, featured on the Hard Knocks last year was that thing where I believe his sister lives with him.
Yeah, goes to ASU, right?
Yeah, the different options for college. And it was never revealed publicly that much. But my understanding is she chose Arizona State. And she's starting this year, or if it's next semester, I think whatever it is, she chose Arizona State. So you think in the back of your mind that Budda wants to be here for her. How much is that a part of whatever will be happening? And so, like I said, it's all an unknown. I think it's important for him to be a part of this team because of all the change. And this whole notion, Mark, that perhaps there's this reluctance on the part of the organization to give a guy with 2 years left on his contract a restructured deal because of the, quote, precedent it sets. Well, to me, what's the precedent? I mean, it's not as if, can anybody make a list of even a couple guys that would be lining up at Monty Ossenford's door wanting a new contract because they would give one to Budda Baker? There's hardly any veterans on this team in that situation. So to me, the positive about taking care of him financially is you send a message to all these new guys coming in, all these young players on one-year deals, all these rookies that they've selected and signed and drafted. You're sending a message that, hey, you be a Budda Baker and we will take care of you down the line. And I think that's an important message to send to this entire roster, much less having him around for his ability and his leadership.
Well, yeah, and how many guys have played on the ankle injury that Budda played with last year, the busted up shoulder? And I'm a firm believer in the old, remember the movie The Natural, where Roy Hobbs and the New York Knights used to sit there? Losing is a disease as contagious as the bubonic plague. I think losing gets in your water, and it's hard to get out. And I think Budda Baker's a guy that can really set the tempo there. But if the Cardinals start losing this year, when do you pull the plug and say, hey, Kyler, don't even come back? Or do you feel like you have to have him back if he's healthy enough?
I think you have to have him back. I think there's a variety of reasons for that. With the biggest one is that whenever it is that he's ready to play, he will have had to have some practice in this new system. We heard Colt McCoy talk at OTAs about how important it is to be on the field. And even though you're getting mental reps and you're learning the things in the classroom, it's another whole thing to run it out on the field. And the only way you really get totally comfortable with it is you do that, you make some mistakes, and you learn from them. He's not going to have a lot of time whenever it is to play to get ready for it. But I do think that it will be important for him to get on the field with this new system and to show this new, the new coaches and the new staff what he's capable of doing, of being with, the program. And then most important, Mark, is whenever it is, if it's after 2 games, if it's after 4 games, if it's after 8 games, whatever it is, there will be a stretch of time where you hope that not only he plays well when he's out there, which could be hard with the supporting cast, you also hope that he stays healthy, because that to me is still the elephant in the room with Kyler Murray because of the injuries that he has suffered throughout these first 4 seasons. And I think that's important for the organization to feel comfortable with him, that he can stay healthy when he goes out on the field. So no, in my mind, I wouldn't shut it down. I don't believe that this group would do that, no matter how many wins they would have when he comes back, because what you would want to do at that point is, hey, get your quarterback out there, get the guy out there that this organization has paid so much money to, and let him show how he can help make this team get better and have some real positive feelings going into 2024.
Over under on how many Caleb Williams stories that you will write in the next 6 months?
Item, because I think it's a waste of breath. Well, maybe not breath, but a waste of time, because there's so many factors with that. Now, if we get to the end of the season and he's not playing well and he's injured or crazy things happen, well, then maybe that would be the time, to start talking about it. But I mean, who knows? Who knows? Maybe this team maybe they surprise us all, Mark, and win some games. I mean, I don't remember the exact season, but it might have been 5 or 6 years ago when Todd Bowles was the head coach of the Jets. And everyone looked at that team on paper and said, this is a horrible football team. They might not win any game. And they ended up winning 5. Still not great, obviously, but it was more than anybody thought that they would win. And so you get out there in this league and just play hard. I think that's one thing certainly expect this team to do. I think the defense, even though it might be a little bit undermanned, is going to get after people and play with a lot of energy. And who knows? Who knows? Maybe you force some turnovers. You play good defense. You get some breaks. And maybe you win some games that nobody expects you to win. And so I think that's a big factor in terms of what they do. But if they win a few games, then, who knows? Who knows what spot they would be in the first round. But then again, they only won 4 last year and they still ended up with the 3rd pick. When they picked Kyler Murray, what did they win the year before? I think they had 3 wins the previous year, and that still got them the number 1 overall pick. So as long as they're in that shouting distance, if you will, there will be people talking about it. But I'm going to try to avoid it because no matter what it is, and even if that, I don't know how realistic it is anyway, considering his contract, and you'd have to have someone trade for him to be able to take a lot of that coming guaranteed money, especially next year, off the books, so it doesn't kill the Cardinals against the salary cap. And if he doesn't play well when he comes back, or there's another injury, well, there's not going to be a whole lot of trade market for Kyler Murray, I wouldn't think. So, all these aspects go into it, and I just think it's just, what's the point? What's the point of talking about that now? What's the point of talking about it in September or October when you just don't know what it's going to look like when you get to January the season?
No, I agree, and it's an interesting situation to be in because you are following the storylines, but you're also, you can't. None of us know the answer to that. What we do know the answer to is we're going to see the team on the field tomorrow for the first time at mandatory minicamp. What do you feel like is a strength of this team right now?
Wow, that's I'm not sure where the strength is. When you look at all the units and you say, wow, every unit has a lot of questions with it. You can say, well, I like the running backs, but beyond James Conner, do you really know what you have? Tight end looks okay, but you don't know when Zach Ertz is going to be available to play. Wide receivers, productive guys that are now at the top of the depth chart, led by Hollywood Brown, but they're all short players. Brown's 5'9", and Greg Dortch and Rondale Moore are 5'7". So is that a strength? I've heard some say the offensive line is a strength. Not so sure you can say that right now. It's good Will Hernandez is back. It's good that DJ Humphries is back. Supposedly, potentially healthy. Hopefully he can stay that way. Kelvin Beachum is back. Will he be the right tackle, or will it be Paris Johnson Jr., the rookie? Who's going to be the center? Who's going to be the left guard? So I don't know. You can't call that, in my mind. You can't. And then you look at the secondary. I guess you could probably say, Mark, if you look at one strength, and you assuming Budda Baker will be here, you look at the safeties and say you've got Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, and that's pretty darn good to have that. But the cornerbacks are a question mark. The edge rushers at linebacker are a question mark. So maybe the strength of this team is the special teams.
Matt Prater, one of the best of all time to do it. I think he's also coaching. We heard this week he's coaching girls flag football out in the East Valley. Can't wait for the matchup of his team and Lorenzo Alexander's team. I think they're both, headed for a showdown here on PHNX. You guys can maybe get something on the site, get some traffic there.
But yeah, he's back. They re-signed Aaron Brewer, the long snapper. It looks like the punter will be different in Matt Hack if he wins the job. So, and I think the coverage will probably be pretty good because a lot of the guys that they signed in the offseason, a lot of them are standout special teams and cover guys. So that'll probably, if there's one thing to pin it on, you can say, well, they should have pretty good special teams.
The pass rush worries me probably the most. I was thinking about that. I mean, yeah, the receiving corps looks like they brought in some guys over 6 foot, and they're going to just try out a bunch of different people and see who sticks. But is Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons going to be their pass rushers? How do you see this thing going down?
I don't know that Simmons will be. I'm sure there might be some times that he will be, and they'll use him in blitzes and things like that. But none of us have a real sense of what this defense is truly going to look like in terms of, is it a 3-4, is it a 4-3, is it a mix, is it a hybrid? I know when Jonathan Gannon was asked that early in the offseason, he said all of the above. And so I think they're going to use a lot of guys in a lot of different ways. And so the real key will be the development of guys who have been here, the continued development like Myjai Sanders, Cameron Thomas, and maybe Dennis Gardeck. And then, of course, the second-round pick, B.J. Ojulari. He was picked in the second round for a reason. And he's got tremendous athletic ability and should be a pretty darn good pass rusher. Will he do that right out the gate? Maybe, maybe not. But he still will be a guy you'd think that when he's on the field will be something for that offenses will have to contend. That's what they're going to be counting on is a bunch of these guys, stepping up and getting the job done. How much Zaven Collins will actually end up being used on the outside? Who knows? Maybe a lot of it will be in the run game more than in the pass, and then in the pass rush he'll do some other things. But I think, like I said, I think that this defense is going to be multiple. It's going to be different scheme, different formations within the scheme, different defenses, and that's the way they're going to try to make it difficult for offenses to figure out what they're doing. But you still have to be able to cover people. And when you look at cornerback, after Marco Wilson, there's questions there. Yeah, you do have Antonio Hamilton Sr. and some other guys. But you know what, Mark? Right now on the roster, I was counting this up the other day. I was pretty shocked. You have 19 defensive backs and 12 cornerbacks.
Wow.
And the question is, how many of them can truly play?
Right.
Depth is there going to be? And obviously that's going to be something that's decided in training camp. But that's a lot of defensive backs on your roster. It's over 20% of the roster are defensive backs right now as they enter this minicamp.
Well, it's certainly creating competition to try to get the best, talent out there on the field. But when you look at a guy like Simmons and a guy like Collins, and they've certainly had their moments, but you talk about Ojulari being ready anymore. How long do you give a guy until it's just not going to work someplace? How long does a guy have? In your estimation, to say, oh, that guy's good, he can stay, we're gonna give him a contract, we want to be a Cardinal, as opposed to when you first started covering, the NFL?
Well, with Simmons, this is really a make or break year for him because the Cardinals did not give him the 5th-year option on his contract, and so he'll be scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent next March, and who knows what the market will be for him depending on how he plays. This season. Next May, they'll have to make a decision on Zaven Collins. Does he get the 5th-year option? I like the way Collins has developed, and I think he can be a long-term very good player for this team. But does that mean that you invest big money in a second contract in him? That's the question that is way too early to answer, but is a legitimate question to ask. And beyond that, Mark, you look at this defensive line, and you lose, obviously you lose Zach Allen in free agency. J.J. Watt retires, and you just have a whole bunch of guys there that you're saying to yourself, wow, who's it going to be that will help stop the run? And Carlos Watkins, who they signed as a free agent, has been with the Cowboys, could be one of the guys that they're counting on. And so, who knows what that defensive line is going to look like. Lawrence, you like him when he's on the field. He can hardly stay on the field.
Right, yeah.
There's a guy who showed some things last year, but when you look at this defensive line, there's some real question marks with that group, unless guys that we don't know about or don't know how they're going to do really step up. So that's why overall this defense is really a tough one to predict how productive they're going to be.
All right, when will you make a prediction about how many games this team will win, and how are you leaning right now?
Probably near the end of training camp. I think that will come. I think that it's certainly not going to be a high number, I would think that the max, I think everybody would be thrilled with 5 or 6 wins. You hope it's not one of these years that just continues like it was at the end of last season, where they couldn't buy a win at all. I mean, heck, we forget that, after that Thursday night game when DeAndre Hopkins returned and the Cardinals beat the Saints, they were 3-4.
Right.
3-4 at the same time. The 49ers. And look at the way both those teams did what they did the rest of the season. Cardinals won one more game the entire season. I mean, that's just hard to really comprehend. And so you hope it's not like that. Even though you have to acknowledge they were in a lot of those games, and a bunch of them were close, and they lost games in strange ways, like against the Chargers, like against the Patriots, the Falcons, some other one. So you just kind of hope that they're in a lot of games, they have chances to win in the fourth quarter, and maybe they steal some victories and make some big plays offensively or defensively, and maybe they can win 4 or 5. So I won't make a hard prediction until then, but it'll probably be in that area, because I'm not a guy who's going to sit here and go, oh, they're going to go 2-15. I mean, that's just around and think a team will actually be that bad in terms of figuring out a way to win games, because I do think that as everybody gets on the same page, that you would hope, and with Murray's return, hopefully, that they will be better in the second half of the season than they will be in the first half.
Yeah. And the next time the NFL team in this town starts 7-0 and the NBA team goes to the NBA Finals, would you remind me to enjoy it more, please?
Yeah, well, that's a great point, because we forget sometimes. And I thought it was interesting, as I digress, and I was saying this to someone the other day. If the Nuggets close out the Heat, they will have lost 4 games in the entire playoffs.
Wow.
4 games. And there's only one team and there will have only been one team among the 4 that won 2 games in the series. And we know what team that is. And that team fired its head coach. So I think sometimes there's, perspective is maybe not there in bunches when we look at what happens to teams sometime. But yeah, like you said, appreciate it when it's pretty good, because a lot of times that can be pretty fleeting.
Well, at least we have the Arizona Diamondbacks this summer. Maybe we'll see you down there with Derek Montilla and PHNX and those guys. Where can we see your stuff, and where can we find you on the air again?
Well, as you met, phnx.com. You can see my writing there. I did a story at the end of last week that's up now on the offensive line and how that's coming together and how important that is to a team's fortunes. I also did something last week on some of the undrafted free agents to keep an eye on, and then I'll be doing some content this week on the minicamp. And every once in a while, I show up with Johnny and Bo on the PHNX podcast, so everybody should just keep tuned to that as well.
All right. Would you wear your hat backwards with those guys? I feel like that's the issue, and we should get the 3 of you guys.
That I don't know if that's something you'll do. I'm not so sure about I hardly ever wear caps at all anyway, much less wearing one backward.
All right, ask Johnny about Harbaugh too. I want to hear that whole story. So, hey, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to seeing you out at practice this week.
All right, Mark. Look forward to seeing you too. Take care.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.